The sky does not turn black. It becomes a void. It is a transition so sudden and so absolute, that the human eye struggles to register the theft of the universe. In the first fraction of a second, the golden hue that defined the world vanishes, replaced by a visual vacuum that feels heavy against the retinas. The moon, which moments ago was a silver lantern in the sky, simply ceases to exist, its reflected light extinguished because the source of that reflection has been erased from the fabric of the solar system. The stars do not twinkle, they burn with a cold, terrifying intensity that provides no warmth and no comfort. This is the cessation. But to understand why, we must rewind to the beginning. In the moments preceding this cosmic disappearance, the solar system exists in a state of delicate, balletic equilibrium. Our star, a massive sphere of burning plasma weighing approximately 2 octillion tons, exerts a gravitational pull so immense, that it curves the very fabric of space and time. This curvature acts like an invisible anchor, holding the 8 planets and their myriad moons in a perpetual, high-speed orbit. Earth travels at a speed of 30 kilometers per second, a velocity so extreme that without the sun's gravity, we would be flung into the interstellar dark like a stone from a sling. The light we see, the warmth we feel, and the very ground we stand upon are all consequences of this massive atomic furnace. The physics of our existence are governed by the speed of light, which travels at approximately 300,000 kilometers per second. This means that for 8 minutes and 20 seconds, we are living on borrowed time. If the sun were to vanish instantaneously, we would continue to see it in our sky, oblivious to the catastrophe that has already occurred. We would feel the warmth of a ghost star. We would watch the sunset of a sun that is no longer there. This delay is the ultimate cosmic mercy, a final 8 minutes and 20 seconds of ignorance before the laws of the universe catch up to our reality. The transition begins with the gravity. Gravity is not instantaneous, it propagates at the speed of light. At the exact moment the light vanishes, the gravitational tether snaps. The Earth, no longer bound by the sun's curvature, begins to travel in a perfectly straight line into the depths of space. There is no jolt, no sudden shake, because we are moving with the planet. It is a silent departure. The atmosphere, however, begins to react to the sudden absence of solar pressure. The photons that were once bombarding our gas envelope at a rate of 1,360 watts per square meter are gone. The first minute of the darkness is defined by a global, collective confusion. On the day side of the planet, the transition from midday sun to total starlight happens faster than a light switch being flipped. The blue of the sky, caused by Rayleigh scattering, collapses as the high-frequency light disappears. The atmosphere becomes transparent, revealing the Milky Way in a clarity never before seen by human eyes. In the cities, the automatic streetlights flicker to life, triggered by the sudden onset of what the sensors perceive as night. But this is not night. Night is a shadow, this is the absence of the source. By the second minute, the thermal radiation of the planet begins to leak into the vacuum of space. Without the constant input of solar energy, the Earth becomes a closed system that is rapidly losing its heat. At an atomic level, the kinetic energy of air molecules, once energized by ultraviolet and infrared radiation, begins to dissipate. These molecules slow their vibration, a process of thermal cessation that begins at the outermost layers of our thermosphere. In the upper atmosphere, the ionosphere starts to collapse as the ionization of particles ceases. The layers of charged particles that allow for long-range radio communication begin to dissipate, causing a slow degradation of global signals. The silence begins to grow, not just in the air, but across the digital spectrum. 3 minutes into the void, the temperature drop is not yet felt by the skin, but it is felt by the environment. The plants, the primary engines of life on our world, stop their biological processes. Photosynthesis, the conversion of light into chemical energy, ceases globally and simultaneously. The stomata on the leaves of billions of trees begin to close as the chemical signals for light disappear. The production of oxygen stops. While we have enough oxygen in our atmosphere to last for thousands of years, the immediate cessation of the planet's primary energy cycle marks the beginning of a slow biological decay. By the 5th minute, the realization of the scale of the event begins to settle into the human consciousness. This is not an eclipse. There is no corona. There is no moon blocking the disk. The stars are visible in every direction, even where the sun should be. The planets, those wandering stars that have guided navigators for millennia, begin to fade one by one as the sun's light reaches them and then fails to reflect. Jupiter, Saturn, and Mars disappear from the sky in a chronological sequence determined by their distance from the missing center. Most turn away from the void. But here at Velastrix, we decode the math behind the chaos. Join the archive by subscribing now. At the 8-minute and 20-second mark, the final photon emitted by the sun strikes the Earth. This is the moment of the true dark. The horizon, once a line of glowing atmosphere, becomes a sharp, black edge against the starry background. The oceans, which hold a massive amount of thermal inertia, begin to release their stored heat into the cooling air. The surface of the water remains liquid for now, but the currents, driven by solar heating and the Earth's rotation, begin to shift and falter. The first hour is a period of chaotic thermal adjustment. The global temperature begins to fall, dropping by several degrees Celsius. In the deserts, where there is little moisture to trap heat, the drop is even more precipitous. The wind patterns, once dictated by the uneven heating of the Earth's surface, begin to break down. The massive atmospheric cells that move air from the equator to the poles start to stall, leading to erratic, violent gusts as the air settles into a new, colder equilibrium. As the first 24 hours pass, the Earth has traveled more than 2.5 million kilometers away from its original orbital path. We are now a rogue planet, drifting through the interstellar medium at 30 kilometers per second. The temperature has dropped to nearly 0 degrees Celsius globally. In temperate zones, the frost begins to form not just on the ground, but on the very buildings and trees. The moisture in the air is being pulled out, crystallizing into a fine, white powder that blankets the world. Within a week, the global average temperature hits -17 degrees Celsius. The oceans are still liquid, protected by their immense volume, but the top layers are beginning to form ice. This ice acts as an insulator, slowing the loss of heat from the depths below. In the deep trenches, the hydrothermal vents continue to pump out heat and minerals, creating small pockets of warmth that are entirely independent of the sun. Life here, which has never seen the light, continues as if nothing has changed. But for the world above, the era of biology is reaching cessation. After 1 month, the Earth is a world of ice. The temperature has plummeted to -100 degrees Celsius. The atmosphere itself is beginning to change. The water vapor has long since frozen out of the air, leaving a dry, freezing mixture of nitrogen and oxygen. The carbon dioxide in the atmosphere reaches its freezing point of -78 degrees Celsius and begins to fall from the sky as dry ice snow. This white, glittering dust covers the frozen remains of the forests and the silent, dark skeletons of the cities. The skyscrapers of the world become tomb-like structures of steel and glass, encrusted in a thick layer of frozen gases. Inside, the air is still, moving only when the temperature differentials cause a ghostly breeze. The vast majority of plant life has undergone atomic decomposition as ice crystals rupture cell membranes. The animals that could not find shelter in the geothermal hotspots or deep underground have faded away into the silence. The planet is no longer a blue marble, it is a white, frozen orb, hurtling through a dark that will never end. 1 year into the journey, the temperature on the surface stabilizes at approximately -240 degrees Celsius. This is near absolute zero. At this point, the atmosphere itself begins to liquefy and then freeze. Nitrogen and oxygen rain down as liquid droplets before solidifying into a layer of atmospheric ice several meters thick. The Earth is now a silent, airless rock. The only heat remaining on the planet comes from the decay of radioactive elements in the core, a faint warmth that keeps the very center of the Earth molten while the surface is a frozen wasteland. The geological activity of the planet continues in a muted form. Volcanic eruptions still occur, but they are now surreal events. Instead of glowing red lava flowing through a green landscape, the magma bursts through a crust of nitrogen ice, creating towering plumes of steam and ash that freeze instantly and fall back to the ground as gray snow. The pressure from these internal fires creates giant cracks in the ice, deep canyons that reveal the dark, frozen water of the oceans below. The oceans are the last bastion of the old world. Under a crust of ice kilometers thick, a liquid ocean still exists, kept warm by the planet's internal heat. In this dark, high-pressure environment, some forms of microbial life and perhaps even complex organisms could survive for billions of years. They would exist in a world where the sun is a myth, a legendary golden orb that once sat at the center of the universe. To them, the universe is a cold, dark place with a warm floor. The Earth, now a dark passenger in the galaxy, may eventually encounter another star. Over millions or billions of years, the gravitational pull of a passing sun might capture our frozen world, pulling it into a new orbit. The ice would melt, the atmosphere would evaporate back into a gas, and the oceans would churn with new life. But the chance of this happening is infinitesimally small. The distances between stars are so vast that we are more likely to drift in the void until the very stars themselves begin to go out. The disappearance of the sun is a reminder of our fragility. We live in a narrow window of temperature and pressure, provided by a star that we often take for granted. Without that golden anchor, our world is nothing more than a cold rock, a silent witness to the indifference of the cosmos. Our technology, our culture, and our history are all powered by the light of a star that could, in the realm of theoretical physics, simply cease to be. We are the children of the light, and in its absence, we are nothing but stardust returning to the dark. To explore the impossible and visualize the unknown, subscribe to Velastrix.